The morning of October 12, 2023, began like any other in Havenwood. The air was crisp, autumn was painting the leaves in gold, crimson, but something was wrong. Deep within the Blackwood forest, a place of local legends, whispered warnings. A discovery was about to shatter the town's peace. A pair of birdwatchers, armed with nothing more than binoculars and a field guide, stumbled upon it. At first they thought it was a mannequin, a cruel prank left by teenagers. But as they drew closer, the horrifying truth settled in. This was no prank. This was a crime scene. A young woman later identified as Elara Vance lay still among the fallen leaves. The scene was unsettlingly pristine, almost staged. She wore a simple white dress, her dark hair fanned like a halo. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no torn clothes, no disturbed earth. The way she was positioned, deliberate. It suggested someone methodical, someone who wanted to send a message. The question became, what was the message and who was it for? The Blackwood had always been a place of mystery. Kids dared each other inside, telling tales of strange lights and phantom whispers. But this was no ghost story. This was real. The ancient trees now looked less like wonders and more like silent witnesses to a terrible secret. Every rustle seemed to echo the final moments of Elara Vance's life. The birdwatchers, the Millers, backed away slowly, hearts pounding. The beautiful morning had turned into a nightmare. They fumbled for their phone, fingers shaking until the call finally went through, voices choked with shock. The whispering woods had a new secret to keep. The silence after the call was heavier than any sound. This is where our story begins. The news spread through Havenwood not like a wildfire, but like a chilling fog. It started with whispers at the diner, then hushed phone calls between neighbors. By noon the town was shrouded in shock and disbelief. Elara Vance? It couldn't be. Not quiet, sweet Elara. The girl who poured their morning coffee. As yellow tape went up at the Blackwood edge, the grim reality began to sink in. The bubble had burst. The monster wasn't just on TV anymore, it was at their doorstep. Fear is strange in a small town. Suddenly it felt personal. Parents who once let children play until dusk now called them in before streetlights flickered. The friendly streets suddenly felt menacing. Every unfamiliar car was noted with suspicion. Trust, the bedrock of the community, began to crack. Sheriff Brody held a press conference, his words carefully chosen, his eyes betraying anxiety. He asked for the public's help, for any information, no matter how small. Friends gathered at the Vance's home, bringing food they couldn't eat. The coffee shop closed its doors. The silence from that corner was deafening. The fear wasn't just about a killer, it was an aching sorrow for a life cut short. Havenwood felt smaller, more fragile. Elara's face haunted them. The girl who had poured their morning coffee now defined their fear. The town's usual bustle had become a constant reminder of loss. By nightfall, Havenwood kept its doors locked for the first time in years. They looked at their neighbors differently, wondering what secrets were kept behind closed doors. The investigation began with a painstaking search of the crime scene. Sheriff Brody and his team combed every inch. State investigators joined. It was slow and frustrating. The killer had been meticulous. No footprints, no stray fibers, no weapon. The scene was eerily clean, as if someone had floated in and out. The first lead came from the autopsy. She had not been killed in the woods. She had been moved there after her death. Cause of death, asphyxiation, no marks on her neck, a clean, clinical killing. Police began searching for a primary crime scene, her apartment, her car, places she frequented. They pieced together a timeline of her last day, shift at the coffee shop, a visit to the library, and then she vanished. The first suspect, Liam, her ex. Their breakup had been messy. He had a temper, but he had a solid alibi. Time cards and co-workers confirmed a night shift. He was ruled out as primary, though he lingered as a person of interest. As days turned into weeks, the trail grew cold. Investigators interviewed dozens, friends, family, co-workers. No witnesses, no footage, nothing. The town's anxiety deepened. A young state detective, Miller, believed in details. He recanvassed Elara's street. When he knocked on one quiet door, he found a man who blended into the background. Arthur Finch. Arthur was polite, immaculate, a widower who kept to himself. He didn't fit the killer profile, but as Miller was leaving he noticed a small hand-carved wooden bird tucked behind porcelain figurines. Detectives had found an almost identical bird among Elara's mementos, a secret admirer's gift. It was a tiny scrap until it became a thunderclap. That small detail propelled Miller to dig deeper into Arthur's past. What he found was deeply disturbing. A changed name, sealed records, a cold case from another state. Arthur Finch, once Arthur Peterson, had a sealed juvenile record tied to a missing teenage girl, a hidden past that shifted the case from baffling to sinister. Arthur Finch wasn't his real name, he had changed it 15 years ago. His real name? Arthur Peterson. A sealed juvenile record from another state hinted at a disappearance that never closed. The team was stunned. The clean crime scene, the lack of evidence, the staging. This wasn't the work of an amateur, someone who'd learned from past mistakes, someone who had killed before and gotten away with it. Police obtained a search warrant. This time they weren't making a polite inquiry. They tore through the immaculate house searching for evidence of murder. What they found in the basement was a horror hidden beneath normalcy. Behind a false wall, a small, soundproofed room, a single chair, restraints, cleaning supplies, on a workbench, a chilling gallery, more than a dozen hand-carved birds, trophies. The most damning piece, a single strand of long dark hair recovered from the drain. DNA confirmed it belonged to Elara Vance. They'd found their primary crime scene, not in the woods, not in her car, but in the meticulously clean, hidden chamber. He had been hiding in plain sight, shielded by the town's trusting nature. News of Arthur Finch's arrest hit Havenwood like a physical blow. How could this be? The man who tended roses and nodded at dog walkers was a monster. The face of fear was familiar. The danger wasn't an outsider, it lived beside them. Families plunged into new grief. The not knowing was torturous. The knowing, a different kind of hell. For Sheriff Brody, the arrest was relief and failure combined. He had overlooked Arthur Finch. The town's identity, built on assumed transparency, had been shattered. Trust was now cautious. The silence that had allowed a predator to thrive was broken, but the echo lingered. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Arthur Finch's quiet demeanor finally broke. In the sterile room under harsh lights, the mask came off. As Detective Miller laid out the evidence, the wooden bird, the hair, the hidden room, Arthur began to unravel. The wooden bird, once a gift, became his undoing. He confessed. Not with remorse, but a monotone detachment. He spoke as if about someone else. He told them he had become obsessed with Elara, watched her, given her the bird, lured her under the pretense of a plumbing emergency. He admitted to killing her in the soundproofed room, cleaning her, dressing her in white, then taking her to the woods. He described it with terrifying detachment, showing no remorse. There was no grand motive, no jealous rage. He said he killed to preserve her beauty. He saw himself as a collector of beautiful things. The birds were his trophies. He confessed to a cold case from his youth, giving details only the killer could know, finally closing another family's nightmare. The confession was a window into a psychopath who perfected camouflage using age and quietness as shield. He was arrested and the trophy seized. The case moved to court. With confession and mountain of evidence, his conviction was inevitable. He was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. Justice, in the legal sense, was served. But to the town, the verdict closed paperwork, not wounds. Elara's parents had to grapple with the fact that their daughter's killer was their neighbor. The community's reaction mixed anger and profound sadness, guilt for not seeing, grief for what was lost. For Sheriff Brody it was relief and failure. He had lived in Havenwood his whole life and believed he knew its people. The case was solved not by luck but by a young detective who refused to overlook small details, and by the killer's own arrogance. The trial was a formality. The verdict closed a legal chapter, but not the town's wounds. The scars were on the Vances and on every neighbor who once exchanged a pleasantry with Arthur Finch. Life continued. The bakery still sold apple pie, the librarian still knew every child's name. But there was different wisdom now, a vigilance born from pain. A memorial bench for Elara sits in the town square facing the library, a reminder of innocence lost. It reminds them of the life lost, and the innocence that was taken. The story became a caution. The safest places are those where people are not afraid to see. A strong community is not only friendliness, it's being aware and looking out for one another. Years later, Havenwood is still quiet. Doors stay locked a little longer, porch lights burn a little later. Trust that was given freely is now earned cautiously. The story became a scar that would never fully fade, a reminder to watch, to speak, to act. They learned that evil sometimes wears a quiet neighbor's face, but they also learned to look. Havenwood changed, but it endures. The name that once meant peace now carries memory and warning. The memorial bench still sits facing the library, a small promise that lives are remembered. Be wary, but not paranoid. See what is there to be seen. In the quiet that follows a tragedy, communities either shrink from each other or they learn to watch and to care. This was Havenwood's choice.